Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Hems, and my day job is as a cloud architect at Microsoft, and my hobby, if you will, perhaps one of my more favorite hobbies, if I'm honest, has been the leader of the Houston Azure user group. So welcome to everyone who's joined us. I see 25 folks online right now. A warm welcome to all of you. So this one is we've been doing this since 2013, and I've been running it for not that whole time, but a number of years now. I sort of lose track, and this is the first we've ever done that's live, and I think we all know why. Coronavirus nightmare for many of us has caught this. So I, like all of you, are at home. Hopefully you're enjoying some dinner, some food perhaps, working from home, as am I, just in my home office tonight. Normally, ordinarily, these are very much in-person events. The intent of this community is for folks to learn from one another, to help be part of the cloud journey that we all find ourselves on. That very ordinarily is one best done in person, and I've been usually had quite a rule that we never, despite the technology you have available to us, never broadcast it as we are now. Either this is using Teams, or we could use all the technologies in Azure that are available to us. Quite a few, because of the value of the in-person interaction. All that has changed, and so here we are, our first live event. I imagine we will have others. We meet roughly monthly. The only time we've thus far not been able to meet every month, for at least the time I've been running it, was actually Hurricane Harvey did interrupt things for 1 month right there. Not going to let that get in our way this time, so hence we are here online, and I'm grateful to all of you, 29 right now, joining us. Really appreciate that. So in terms of the topics tonight, we had a few options that I've been talking to various presenters that have come and talked with us. One of the things we find ourselves spending a lot of time, because we're focused at home, we have perhaps an opportunity to learn. That's something that I think behooves us all. It's something we can use to spend our time well, train our brains, as it were. So learning is good for all of us. I suggest this is a good opportunity. It seems certainly to me to focus upon that. And for many, it is the case ordinarily anyway that folks often come to the Azure Meetup when I'm talking with them, because they are changing roles, or don't like their current role, or need a new role, and so never more the need for that here in Houston with what's going on than it is right now. So again, that's something we want to support as part of this community, and learning is part of that, as is just being part of this community. So everyone can learn. I've been working with Azure. So a little about me. I mentioned my day job. Been working with cloud architecture since 2007 is when I got my AWS account, which I actually still have. I was at the launch of Azure in 2010, and so I've been working full time with public cloud for over 7 years now. I think, yeah, so 7 years. To keep track, to keep remembering what they all are. So I've been doing it a long time, and the need to learn has certainly been a core concept, something that's been very, very necessary as part of this. And it's grown, and it's as the whole set of public cloud technologies gets more and more popular, even more so these days, then the need for learning it becomes more necessary, and keeping up. As some of you who have been on this journey for a while, but others may be new, will soon see, or may have already seen, it changes very, very quickly. And so keeping up with the changes once you have started to climb that learning curve is another challenge as part of being successful in the world of public cloud. So hence, that is our topic this month. I welcome feedback about other topics, and in fact, I welcome feedback tonight. So there's a few ways, a few technology choices we could have had. Could have had straight teams. That would have been, like a nice interactive call. Could have done that. We went for a broadcast just because that allows us to have a Q&A. So you should be able to ask questions on the right there. Please go ahead and do so. I'll keep a track of it. And let me know if you have any questions. You have, a whole new world. Someone says that it is indeed a whole new world. So I'll keep track of those and help feed those to our speaker tonight, who I'll introduce right now. So our speaker is John Weston, and he's volunteered to speak to us around his experiences around learning. So without further ado, let me put John up on the screen, and okay, John, you're on, sir.
All right, thanks, Adam. Hopefully you guys can see my screen and see me. I guess there's hopefully a little video there. I can't see the feedback in presenter mode here. But hello, Houston. I'm John Weston, coming to you from my home in Dallas, Texas. So I'm just up the road a little bit in Houston all the time with our customers. And I work for a company called Publicis Sapient. Used to work for Microsoft. And so kind of let me switch the slides here and making sure that you understand what my role is here at Publicis Sapient and what I used to do when I worked at Microsoft. So the first of this year, I joined Publicis Sapient. My title is Senior Vice President in charge of the global Microsoft practice. So we are a GSI with Microsoft, or a global systems integrator. So we're one of 18 partners to Microsoft throughout the world that they manage at that level. So we work on hundreds of customers together all over the world. So I manage that relationship with Microsoft, as well as we're a consulting firm. And so I run the Microsoft practice. So anything Azure related, Office 365, or Dynamics 365 that our company is doing as a consulting firm, I oversee that in our practice. And it's just amazing. Only been here 2 months, but to see the amount of projects that we're doing around the world in Azure is just overwhelming. It's kind of really cool. Just a little bit of brief about my background. Dallas native, went to high school and college here. Started my own consulting firm right out of college many years ago. Was a consulting firm with my brother for 10 years. We were both an IBM and Microsoft partner. So I became a Microsoft partner in the mid 80s. So many years ago, been around the Microsoft ecosystem for many years. Did that for 10 years and then joined Microsoft first as a contractor, then as an employee. So all those years was 24 years at Microsoft, lots of different roles, everything from a trainer to an evangelist, group manager. But about, I guess it was 2009, not 2010, but late 2009, I was an IT pro evangelist, and we used to go around and give speeches on when we launched new products. And I was the in-person event. So we had this new thing come out called Azure. And I immediately saw the potential in that. And I said, I'm going to flip my career and do nothing but Azure. But I've done nothing but Azure for 11 years now. Was part of the team that launched Azure across 26 cities throughout the United States. Back then, it just did PaaS and only had 4 features. Now there's literally hundreds and hundreds of features of Azure. And I really wanted to kind of, through those years, I wanted to explain how I've learned as much as I know about Azure, and how in the world do you try to keep current or learn if you're just starting out on what you might want to learn with Azure. So that's what I want to talk about today. Some of the last roles that I had at Microsoft is I ran the enterprise sales team that sold Azure. So I sold Azure to customers like Walmart and AT&T, some of the biggest companies in the world, helping them realize the value of the cloud and moving their applications and resources to the cloud. I decided to leave Microsoft in December, took an early retirement package, and joined Publicis, and hope to keep doing the same. I have such a huge passion about Azure. I want to continue to do that. So let me tell you just a little bit about who Publicis Sapient is. We're part of the Publicis Group, which is a French-based company. There's 4 major parts to Publicis. There's Publicis Communication. You see some of the brands there. Publicis Media, you see the brands are there in the lower left. And then finally in the bottom right, Publicis Health and the brands there. We're one of the largest media companies in the world. We buy over $80 billion worth of advertising on behalf of our customers throughout the world every year. Publicis Sapient is the consulting arm. We're a digital first company. We're in the business of helping customers do digital business transformation as part of the Publicis Group. So the Publicis Group, as you can see, we have over 20,000 employees throughout the world, 50 offices located. And I was on the internal call today, and somebody said, no longer do we have 50,000 or 50 offices, we have 20,000 offices. Technically, only 2 of our offices are open today. Singapore and I think China are the only 2 that are still open. The rest have been closed, and we're all working from home. And so we have lots of offices throughout the world. Over 30 years of history, you can see some of the brands and customers that we've helped over there on the right, and you can see the verticals that we help on the lower left. We do a lot of work with energies and commodities, such as Chevron, Phillips 66, and Exxon, all there in the Houston area. So what kind of services as a consulting firm do we do? I'm not going to go through all of this, but think about digital business transformation. And what I view that is helping companies keep current, keeping them from getting Uberized, if you will, modernize their applications, take advantage of the public cloud. To me, somebody asked, how do you define the work that Sapient does? I said, we do digital business transformation using the building blocks that Azure provides, right? And so it's really, to me, to be able to do a true digital transformation, you have to have the cloud. You have to have the features of the public cloud. And a lot of those are features that you, quite frankly, can't do on-prem. Now, I know there's Azure Stack, but Azure Stack doesn't have all the features that we need today to do a true business transformation. And so Adam and I were talking about what do I want to talk about? And to me, I really want to kind of share, just starting, and would love to get your input, and if Adam has others and anybody else, how they learn Azure. First off, what is Azure and how do I learn it? And then the second is there's just way too much information. Where in the world do I start? Okay. And so what I've done is I've got 2 pages here of links that I'm going to go into each one of these links and do a quick little demo for you to show you what that information's about and how you can use it to help learn Azure. Now, there's obviously other resources. Is this a complete exhaustive list? Absolutely not. That list is always changing. There are charge courses that you can take with Microsoft Learning Partners if you want to do. And that's totally your choice. It depends on how you learn, where you are in your own education journey. But as we think about these strange economic times that we've been put in the last 2 or 3 weeks, you know, everybody needs to think about, if I've got some spare time, how do I invest in myself, right? So I thought I really learned Azure. I would spend some time reading things. I would look at some videos. I would, you know, try to keep current. And people think if you employ Microsoft, you get training and all this information first, and then the customers get it months later. That's not true. And from the Microsoft employees get this information at the same time you do, the same blogs and everything. The second one up here is the Microsoft blog, and I'll tell you a little story about that. I had a retail customer, won't name names, but retail customer call me and say, and they actually sent my rep a email, says, we would like to have a briefing from Microsoft on how Microsoft Azure does blockchain as a service. And my reaction to the rep was, we do that? I had never heard of it. I mean, I barely even heard of what blockchain was. And so I quickly did some research and found that the week before we had announced that as a new service of Microsoft. And I was embarrassed, right? I mean, here I was supposed to be the person that knew everything that there was about Azure and how a customer had read something and was asking me to become the expert. I didn't even know we did it. So I vowed that day forward that I would never get caught in that situation again. So how do I stay current? Well, one of the things I do is I start my day, and I still do this today, even though I've left Microsoft. I'm an early bird. I get up early, before the kids are up, before the dogs are up, before I have to, you know, get on email, and I invest in myself every day. Usually it starts about 5 a.m. I really can't sleep past 5 o'clock. I get up and I go to the Microsoft blog about Azure and I start reading. And I usually will read for about 2 hours. I'm just love to read. and I remember a lot of what I read. I don't remember 100% of the details, but I remember where that article was and how I can find that information if I need to go back and look at it further. And so I've done that now for about 8 years, not every single day, but most days. And you think about the number of hours that that's added up to, 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, probably for 7 or 8 years, we're approaching 10,000 hours of what people, before you become an expert in anything, you really have to know that. And let me kind of show you some of that where I start. So let me kind of flip over from this PowerPoint, and we'll make this PowerPoint available to the group. I'm not quite sure, Adam, how we'll post it, but we'll find a way to make sure it's available to everybody.
Very well.
First is let's just look at the main Azure site here. So azure.com or azure.microsoft.com. So let me see if I flip over to my browser. Can y'all see that?
Yeah, that looks good, John.
Yep. Okay. So this is azure.com, the English version for the US. So this is the main route. This is kind of the beginning of everything. And if you go here, one of the first things you can see is anybody can sign up for a free 30-day account. So you can go give, as long as you have a valid email address, anybody can go get a free 30-day account and try it. If you're in things like an MSDN subscription, I think one of the features of an MSDN subscription is you get free access every month, so many hours or so many dollars worth of resources. And there's lots of information here immediately about learning as you get it. Talks about resources for you, how it's around the globe, what kind of reliability, what kind of organizations are using Azure. And there's even thousands of case studies out here. And then Microsoft's also looked at, here's some ready to go solutions that are built today. For example, if you use SAP ERP, boom, here's how to move that from on-prem to the cloud because of the forcing function that you're getting with the HANA database. There's blockchain, that one I was embarrassed on about 6 years ago when we announced that. But as you can see, there's lots of different solutions that we have out here. And then there's Azure Friday, the blog, and a whole bunch of different webinars and different things that you can teach up. This is just off the main page. Okay, there's how you create and get your $200 worth of free Azure, and go ahead and log in that. So there's lots of different information here. This is just the main Azure page. Off the top of it here, you can then start looking at the different products. So when I mention all the different features of Azure, there literally are hundreds of those today. Okay, these are the ones that are featured and the most popular information that people are interested in today. But just take networking, for example. There literally are just many, many different features that you can go in. Just networking, there's pages and pages of different features here that the product has. So it's impossible to be an expert in all of them. I thought I could be at one point, but the product has gotten too big. You can then go to the documentation section. And this takes you through, and everything is, there's write-ups, there's ebooks. You just click on the different feature that you want to look at, and you can start into the documentation. There's a pricing tool, there's training, which we'll talk more about. There's a marketplace, like where companies like ourselves will put third-party products that run just in Azure. And if you want to find one of Microsoft's partners, so there's a partner catalog, if you will, if you need support on it, or if you need the blog, or there's even additional information. And there's everything from the legal terms to the trust center, as well as resources where you can find white papers, templates, events, downloads, and all that kind of other fun information that's out there. So that's the main Azure page. Any questions on that first one?
I'm not seeing any just yet, John. We'll let folks
and I can't see the Q&A panels.
Yeah, I'll
Adam, let me know if we have any.
I wanted to add something about the couple of things that you had mentioned there real quick. So I can totally relate to what you were saying around being tripped up by new things changing all the time. That too has happened to me more times than I care to admit, just where things change so quickly. In fact, I've just got used to the fact that even when I've reviewed the documentation and try and remember it, looking up things, I have to, when I'm asked something and I remember the answer because I've looked it up recently, I still find myself going to some of the resources that you're sharing, just because it changes so frequently. And I wanted to highlight the Trust Center that you just showed there very briefly, John. I know it's not one of your links, but that one's quite a key one, quite often for folks who are earlier in their cloud journey. Just call that one out, because it has a lot of information that folks who are still nervous around security concerns, policies, procedures, those kinds of things around migrating from on-prem to public cloud. That's the place to go for those kinds of resources, and also if those under regulatory compliance issues. That also is the place to go to get reassurance as to the various certifications.
Yeah, there's thousands of certifications that Azure has from government agencies to different countries, the EU, ISO certifications. It's just amazing. I love to tell one of my favorite stories there is about Walmart. You know, anytime you're doing a cloud thing, the chief information security officer or the CISO, you say, nope, we're not going to the cloud, and put the end of your project. Well, at Walmart, we worked for 9 months with the CISO to show them what we do at Microsoft. Here I'm talking about, like, I still work at Microsoft, and we showed him this, how secure Azure was. They pen tested it. We went through lots of different scenarios over those 9 months. And at the end of the 9 months, he went to the CIO and said, look, Sarbanes-Oxley, if we get hacked like Target did or hacked like Home Depot did, my job's over, right? But in his view was, instead of just a checkbox, yes or no, we can go to the cloud, he was about, look, the faster you go to the cloud, the safer my job is. And what a perspective for a security officer to have, right? And that was 3 years ago, right? So obviously Microsoft continues to invest in security and has improved it even more since then. So to me, that's an interesting point there. All right, so let me get back to quit telling stories and talk more about the links we want to go to here. The second one on my list is the Azure blog. So let me switch over to that. I've already pulled it up here. So azure.com/blog, or if you just go to Azure and you click on the little blog tab here. I've written blogs. There's lots of blogs out there. This blog has literally thousands of posts. If you look over here on the right under topics, this is just the recent ones in the last year or two. They're archived. You can go back to You can go back to 10 years of posts here. But it's just an amazing. So let's look at, haven't been any yet so far today, but yesterday, the 25th, we had 1, 2, 3 announcements yesterday. That's a light day. Okay, this is where I start my day at 5 o'clock. So yes, I have a personal Surface over here, and the homepage on it is this page. It comes up every morning at 5 o'clock. First thing I read when I get my coffee in the morning is understanding, what was their most recent announcements. Now, I may not go in and read in detail about each one of these, but I at least just read the headline here and read that sentence or two that it's about it, just so I'm informed. Now, and I then can come back and search this tool, right? So I can come in here and use the search and be able to look at past blog entries and try to find that. They've sorted this in a number of different ways. So the first default view here is just looking back chronologically as the announcements have come back, and you can sit here and scroll through day after day. You can also search by who posted it, right? Like, so for example, Yuri's a really good friend of mine. He's also here in Dallas. He's a security expert. He helped write and document the Azure Security Center. So I'm always interested in that. So I can click on Post by Yuri and look at all of the blog posts that just Yuri wrote. Or if I'm particularly interested in getting current on blockchain, I can come over here to the right and the topics, and I can see that there's 86 different articles about blockchain and doing that. And so by the end of this session, hopefully you'll figure out that there's just overwhelming amount of information out there about Azure. And sometimes that's very intimidating and people don't know where to start. And my recommendation, if you're new to Azure, but you want to get your skill set up in Azure, or you say you need improvement, first thing you want to do is come in and get current, 100 level, understand what all these different topics are, just high level. You don't have to know all the nitty-gritty details about serverless, but let's say at least you know what serverless is. And then pick something that you're passionate about and keep current on that and continue to learn about that. I mean, maybe you can't know everything there is to know about big data and blockchain and data science and data warehousing, but pick one that you're really passionate about and spend time investing in yourself to learn about that. And therefore you become more valuable to your current employer. And as we all know, in these strange times we live in, you also become more marketable, right? I mean, Mike, I'll put up a slide at the very end of the presentation that the company I work for today is actually looking for Azure skill sets in Houston. We have openings with our clients that we need to help fill today. And if you have those and are looking for an opportunity, I'll put up my email address where you can get a contact with me or our marketing and recruiting department at the end. So, make yourself more valuable by investing in yourself and knowing these. So I start every day with this blog. They do some highlight ones up here. If you want to look at popular, you want to look at ones that are trending, you can RSS feed, subscribe to it so it comes to your iTunes, however all the different ways that you want to consume this. If you want to see just the updates, and the updates are just amazing here of the announcements that is new features that are announced, new data centers that are announced, new capabilities of when those features are available with the different data, so all those announcements, you can go through and explore those. So I can't tell you over the last probably 7 or 8 years how many, I would say it's probably 500 people I have sent to that. I always get asked the question, how do I learn Azure? Boom, go to the blog, read it, pick an area you're interested in, and immerse yourself. And not only have I sent people to that, I've had many, I've had probably over 100 people come back to me and say, wow, John, I had no idea, one, Azure did that much, and two, that the blog is such a great resource and a great place to start my learning process. You'll hear more about certification, and I'll talk about certification when we get to that tab. But some people, why do I got to get certified on Azure? Yes, certification has its value, but I challenge you to find a part of Azure that you like, are interested in, and if you're interested in it, you're going to be curious and want to learn more and learn more and learn more. And I think that's really, don't focus on, I got to get this XYZ certification. Focus on, what do I want to learn in? And starting at the blog is a great place. So next, let's switch over back to my list. Number 3 is the official Microsoft Learning page. Okay, and so there's the link, as you can see right here. And again, we'll share these links out. You can just search on Microsoft Azure Learning and you'll get to the same thing in your favorite searching tool. But this is learning. Okay, so you can see I've browsed down into that. Within Azure, there are 476 different learning pieces. Okay, and so these are individual modules that you can go in and take. Some of them, as you can see, it shows the time. How do I create my first Azure account? 39 minutes. Okay, this is designed for beginners, people that need to understand what Azure is, and different people learn different ways. I'll show you there's hundreds of videos, there's documentation, there's step-by-step demos or doing what you need to do and walking through that. So there's 476 different ones here. Kind of, you got to sort through these, right? I've got it set just to Azure right now. And then again, just like the other things, if I want to learn just on blockchain or some of those other components, or let's say data lake, I can filter down and get just the classes that have related to data lake. So boom, there's 2 different resources that I would want to do for data lake. Okay, but I can go back and pick all of Azure. There's over 1,100 total, but if I focus it back to Azure, we'll get the 400 plus solutions. One of the ones I'll talk about in a few minutes is Azure Fundamentals. That's almost a 10-hour course, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so this is Microsoft Learning. All the information that you'll see here is free. A lot of it is a combination of walking through screens that you read, as well as videos that you watch, and some of it are hands-on simulations and demos. They range anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to some of these courses are 10 or 20 hours, depending upon how complex the topic is. Okay, again, all of this so far I've shown you is free. It's all out there based upon these links. Any questions there, Adam, or everybody still good?
We have one which is related, I think, to your certification one. So let me ask that when we get to there.
Got it. Okay, we'll get to certifications here in just a minute.
Yeah.
So next up on my list of favorite topics is Channel 9. Okay. Now notice the URL here. This is part of MSDN, Microsoft Developer Network, and it's Channel 9 is a video channel. I have to tell you a little insight to this one. A little trivia. Why in the world is it called Channel 9? And it was designed to be kind of the behind the scenes developer video channel for Microsoft. And like, what does Channel 9 have to do with that? And so if you think about, if you've ever flown on United Airlines, now I'm dating myself, go back before they had the video screens in all the airplanes, when they used to have just the audio channels that you plugged your headsets into the little armrest. If you clicked on Channel 9, you got to listen to what the pilot was talking back and forth with the control tower, kind of behind the scenes, right? And so that name stuck, gosh, 15 years ago. So Channel 9 is kind of the behind the scenes part of that. Within Channel 9, so Channel 9 is designed in general, and you can go to the content here. You can see their whole different series of shows and events that they do. So this is all video based. It's all free. Again, you can download these to your iTunes or your favorite RSS feeder. But Azure Friday is a specific channel within Channel 9, and it is exactly as it sounds. Every single Friday, there is anywhere from a 10-minute to sometimes they're a half an hour on a specific topic. And so here's the last couple of months. Here's last week's episode. There'll be another episode tomorrow. There are 332 episodes out here. So if you're a video learner, great way to come in and do it. There's some phenomenal authors here. I have some of my favorite. One of my favorite presenters, he's really dry, but incredibly knowledgeable, is Scott Guthrie, or Scott Goo as we call him inside of Microsoft. He is a CTO of Azure and is a great presenter, incredibly knowledgeable. And so you can filter this by just clicking on the authors here and see all of the Azure Fridays that Scott Goo has done. So, you know, if you want to listen to them, you can do just the audio portion of them in iTunes, or you can watch the videos. So wherever you are, you can sort them by date, by author, or with whoever else was the guest speaker for that week. Great way to learn. Some people go and just watch this every Friday afternoon, kind of as their transition to the weekend, if you will. But to me, they're available on demand. And as you have time available and you like to learn by videos, great resource for you here. And again, all free to that point. All right, so next up is certifications. So Microsoft.com/us/learning/certifications overview. So let's go to that one.
So John, let me jump in with the
Yeah.
relevant question on this one.
Okay.
So you can answer it, maybe not necessarily now, but perhaps as you go through.
Got it.
The question is it worth the time to get an Azure certificate? If yes, which one is the most valuable? And the question relates to a general data scientist or data engineer.
Got it. Okay.
And we also have another question. Well, okay, let's leave that one. The next one we'll save. So
okay.
Yeah.
So certifications. The following is John's personal opinion. So realize between owning my software company and joining Microsoft, I was a trainer. And back in those days, so I'm talking 98 to 2002, people would pay $5,000 a week to come to my class, in-person training, to pass one Microsoft certification. And you know, the test back in those days was like $75 or $100. Now the tests have gotten more expensive, but you have to take a week-long class to pass each course. The answer is no. Some of it you really have to have the hands-on experience. It depends upon the certification. Personally, I have over 50 Microsoft certifications totally. They're not all in Microsoft. I'm certified on VMware. I'm certified on A+, NetPlus, some of those others. Certified on some other competitor products. So not just Microsoft. Most of my certifications are old. My first certification that I took was on Windows 3.1, if that dates it. So been doing this exams for a long time. So are they worth it? In my opinion, if you're a consultant, or if you're trying to advance your career in this, it used to be the old term paper MCSE, right? Somebody that could pass the exams but couldn't do the real work. I get it. just because you've passed the exams doesn't mean you can do the work. But sometimes having the certifications will create the opportunity for you. Is my opinion. The first exam in 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 the in Azure is the AZ900, the Azure Fundamentals, and I passed that exam with probably, I don't know, a couple of 3 hours worth of studying. I will show you a course. The next one I'll show you, Azure Fundamentals, is geared towards 10 hours of training for you to go pass AZ900. Okay, so there are different levels of certification: fundamental certifications, associate certifications, and expert certifications. Okay, and you can see the different levels. If you're just getting started, if you have about 2 years of hands-on work with the product, and anywhere from 2 to 5 years of hands-on to get to the expert level. There are different types or categories of certifications. There's ones focused for people that are developers, administrators, solution architects, and functional consultants. Okay, so things that are specifically around Microsoft Dynamics. And so you can click here and look at all the role-based certifications. There are a lot, and these change all the time. Okay, so you can see there's just lots of different Microsoft certifications. These are great things to put on LinkedIn, right? If you go and looked at my LinkedIn profile, I post which certifications I have, and that makes, people want to go see my profile on LinkedIn more often, or easier to find me if they're trying to do that. Okay. So certifications, there's lots of different ways you can do it. I'll show you some free ways to get prepared to take these fundamental certifications. The associate certifications, you may want to either take some what's called the Microsoft official curriculum through one of Microsoft's learning partners, or do a lot of on your own studying. Expect to study anywhere from 30 to 50 hours for each one of those. And then the expert certifications, my personal opinion, again, this is not Microsoft or Sapient's endorsement, is you've got to have some hands-on real-world experience. All of these are not just book-based. I recommend through all of them that you have an Azure account that you can use, that you can go do the actual steps that are required as part of the testing process, because it's not just a true, false, or multi-choice questions. Some of the questions now in the test exams is you actually have to show the steps of actually how to do something, so that you know the interface and then you know the tools. But I think overall, certifications are important. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's worth actually emphasizing that may be something that folks might not know, because it's a relatively recent change. So if you've been doing any kind of certifications for a while, you might be used to sort of the multiple guests type approach, and then arranging things in the right order, things like that. Folks should know, as part of the exams now, that as a section of many of the Azure exams, a VM will spin up. You'll actually log into it. It'll be live. It will give you the credentials as part of the exam, and the questions will appear on the right. Things like configure VM1's NSG to allow in port 80 and 8483, something like that. And you have to actually navigate. There's an Azure portal, there's resources already deployed in it, and you'll actually have to make the changes that the question asks. I mean, really do it. I mean, the VM is there, or whatever the resource is. You'll need to make the configuration. There's no guardrails, really. I mean, you do it, and then you keep going. So there's quite a lot of practical now. That folks
it's not book learning. Yeah, there's real world hands-on. Right. I also want to talk about, so when I was at Microsoft, I was a sales manager, and we had a requirement come down from corporate that every person in the field, being salespeople and support people and consultants, had to get AZ900 certified. And so here I was, a manager, or actually a group manager, going to have to require all of my team, who are salespeople, they're not technical, some of them are, but most aren't, to go pass this certification. So the first thing I did before I even mentioned it to my team is I went and passed it. And then I said, okay, guys, you guys know I know Azure, but I studied a little bit and went and passed this exam, and here's how to prepare for it, and all of you are going to be required to pass that. And my team did, right? We were the first team within our sales organization to have 100% people pass AZ900, because it's that important, right? It gives you credibility when you're talking to customers, even if you're a salesperson, if you have that certification. So I came over here to Sapient, and one of the first teams I was talking to was our oil and gas team there in Houston. And they asked me to speak, and I told that story, and I said, listen, and I said, what's our training plan for our engineering people? And we've got resources for them, training classes, and they're all expected to pass the certification. I said, that's great for our engineering and our developers. What about the rest of the company? And so the leader of our oil and gas team in Houston put down the gauntlet. He went and passed it himself. And now we've gotten, I think we're at 100 out of the 250 people in the Houston office have passed that exam in the last 30 days. So I'm very proud of the challenge that I put out to that team about getting certified, and they're doing great at making that goal. So it can be done, and I think it's an important value that everybody goes and gets their certification. So let's talk about how you get prepared for that AZ900. So my last one here on my first page is this link here, aka.ms/AZFunPath. Okay, so that's the free Azure Fundamentals class. So that's this link right here. It's part of the Microsoft Learning Path. It is 9 hours and 48 minutes you can see to complete it. This is an all online class with the intent to help you prepare everything you need to learn for the AZ900 exam. There are no prerequisites for it, but it is designed for beginners, regardless, as you can see, of the different part of Azure that you're going to learn. There's 12 separate modules. One of the interesting things about this is Microsoft also has a learning or training organization. So our large enterprise customers, there's thousands of people in, let's say, a Chevron or an Exxon that need to learn this. And so they have hired trainers, and I have several friends that work in that team. A lot of them that used to be presenters with me years ago are now teaching this class. And so they'll go in and teach this 9-hour class, and then they'll have the entire class take the exam together. Now, I did want to mention one of the things about the exams with the coronavirus going on right now. Obviously, taking an exam at a testing center is probably not going to work these days. So you can take these tests at home or at work whenever you have a computer, but they'll want you to make sure you're in a room with no posters or no notes that you can study from. They actually have you turn on your webcam. So you need a proctor to be able to do that. Well, all the proctors used to be in the testing company's center, and now because of the virus, they're all having to work from home, and they're having some transition issues there. I had several of my teammates try to take exams this week, and they went and showed up at their allotted time to take the exam, and the proctor didn't show. So don't worry about that. They're getting through that. Give them another week or so if you're taking exams. But if you want to get the AZ900, boom, here's your link. You go to Microsoft Learning, go to Azure Fundamentals. Here's a free 9 hours, 48-minute class, everything you need online. Go through this training, and then if you go through and do every single one of the steps of the training, you can see all the 12 modules here. They're listed about what you're going to do and how much time you're going to need to do it. Okay. But as you go through those individual steps, when you get to the end here, step 12, okay, you're going to be ready to go take AZ900. And there's some studies that they've shown that people that invest this 10 hours, probably about a 75 or 80% pass rate of those trying to take the exam, even with very little prior background. So if you're going to do certification, this is kind of where I would start.
Hey John, can I?
Yes. Other questions before I take a drink of water here?
One person asks if you mentioned the 200 level knowledge earlier. Yep. Not everyone knows what the levels are. Could you just describe?
That's great. So you'll hear, I don't know if it's not necessarily Microsoft, but in IT in general, there's 100, 200, 300, and 400 level of expertise. 400 being the expert. You know any and everything there is about that. 100 level is very high level, meaning that I know the basics. I have some exposure to it, and I may have spent some time with it, but I'm not a guru in it. I know what that feature does or that topic from probably 20,000 foot view. And levels 2 and 300 are in between that. 200 says I've got some expertise in it. I've done some hands-on. It may not be necessarily really current, but I have done the work in that technology. And I may not be an expert in everywhere, but I can function on my own in that arena. And then level 300 is not quite an expert. You have lots of experience in that area. You are kind of people go to you. You're the go-to person in that area, but you maybe not necessarily, quote, the best person in that particular area. You're beyond functional and very self-sufficient in that area. At least that's my interpretation of 1, 2, and 3 and 400 level
Okay, thanks, John. If I may, I'd like to just briefly chime in on
Absolutely,
the
please, Adam.
certification question. Let me just,
Yeah.
share some of my experiences. So as John mentioned, you can take these classes at home now, which is something really recommend. You saw John's team starting to do that, something I really recommend to folks. And one approach that I suggest that people consider when looking at these certifications, particularly if you have some Azure experience, you've been tinkering with it for a little bit, you've been doing a little bit of exploration, consider taking the exam. It's $165 without the intent necessarily of trying to pass it. It's just you can take it up to 5 times a year, and there's no, doesn't matter if you don't pass it. Just go with that mindset. The reason I suggest this is go with a mindset of learning from the exam what it is that you don't know, because that is one of the hardest issues in my experience of keeping up with Azure, is what is it that you haven't explored yet, you haven't seen, that you're not so familiar with, or at least not familiar enough in order to pass the exam. And in my experience, one of the most efficient ways of simply finding out what it is you don't know is to just take the exam and make mental notes as to, okay, XYZ service or feature. What on earth is that? Never heard of it. Not a clue. All right, fine. Mental note. Go back and just go look that up and create some hands-on labs or something like that. Learn it through some of the resources that John is sharing here. Very, very efficient. So highly recommend it. And I'll also share some of my experience of taking the exams at home. Took one last week. As John mentioned, they do pop the camera on and listen to you and record you the whole time as part of the proctoring process. You can't have any technology near you within reach.
No cell phones, no.
Yeah, nothing. That's right. Screens are a problem, and TVs. So you make sure you've got your back to any TVs or screens or monitors, because they'll want you to cover them up if you don't have your back to them. And so a good place might be maybe the dining room, perhaps facing a wall. You need to be in a room where you won't be interrupted, because they will ask, hey, does someone enter the room? No, let me see the room real quick. Okay, fine. Are you alone? Okay, yeah, we're good. So they do watch and monitor. So yeah, some place like a dining room might be a good place where there's no gadgetry or screens nearby, is something that I recommend.
I had trouble taking my first one remote like that because my office at Microsoft was just, imagine being there 20 years, you got all kinds of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had posters all over the wall with Azure. And they're like, nope, you have to take all those down. So what I did is I went next door, which was we call it touchdown cube, right? I mean, it's one of those offices that nobody uses. It has a desk and a chair, and that's it. I brought my laptop in and my cell phone, left everything else in my office. And then I got to the proctor and they're like, okay, yeah, that's a good room.
Yeah.
So sometimes changing the room instead of trying to fix all the problems that they come up with can be a good solution.
Yeah, that's what I've had to do. The first time I did it just in my home office where I am right now. You saw me earlier, but there were too many screens and keyboards and such like, and so it was a problem. So that's why I ended up having to take it in my dining room. I've also taken it in my bedroom once when there's no screen. So yeah, and on a laptop, they don't allow multiple screens, so just have your laptop separate. But yeah, it's a very efficient way to do it, and like the reason I share that is that's something we can all do now, right, in the times of coronavirus.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's continue on. Yeah, through the process here. Next is the Microsoft official courses, or Microsoft official curriculum is what it used to be called, or MOC, or mock courses. So if I switch over to that page, that's what this one is. So if you go to microsoft.com/learning on-demand online courses. Okay, so as you can see, what courses are available, all different kinds of classes out here. Most of them give you up to 90 days to complete these. Now, these are not necessarily free. Okay, so you can purchase these through one of the Microsoft Learning Partners, or if you go through the Microsoft Imagine Academy, or there's actually a separate courseware marketplace where you can just purchase these, not through one of Microsoft's Learning Partners. So there's 3 different ways to purchase these. These mock curriculum are taught one of 2 different ways. Okay, they're either taught in person, so this is part of what I used to do as a trainer, or you can do them on demand online. Okay, so this on demand online, there's a great tools here. So this is the actual curriculum, if you will, but you can go in and take this cloud, like for example, configuring and operating a hybrid cloud with Azure Stack. So, if you want to know some great information about Azure Stack and how to deploy it, and you want to invest the dollars and the time to be able to do that, this is not something that you'll complete in a day. This is an investment of both your time and in money to take the courses. But if that's something that you're interested in, I want to make sure that you are aware that there's a lot of third parties, right, that create all their own content and learning around Microsoft products. That's great. But this is the Microsoft official courses that are developed by Microsoft, supported by Microsoft, and obviously, are something that's more tied towards their certification. So if you want to invest in that area, again, this is one of the first things I've shown you that's not free. These are usually taught by MCTs or Microsoft certified trainers or subject matter experts. Has helped people grow their IT career. So that's the Microsoft official curriculum. Next is some tips and tricks. So I thought, not just the training or where the blogs, I thought I would, give you some tips that I've found throughout the years. And so on one of the Microsoft blogs, I think this was actually, back in December of last year, Michael Crump put this together. And he said, if I'm going to learn Azure in 2020, how would I go about doing it? Okay. They had something like this very early on. And they've updated it for those that would, and it's to me, it's quite timely. Here they have it for the New Year's resolutions to learn Azure in 2020. Well, all of those that have extra time today, this may be a great place to start. And so here is Michael's recommendations. First, as we talked about, create a free account. Go in and get your free 30-day trial subscription, get a GitHub account, look around at all the different pay-as-you-go pricing and the services. Stay current with the Azure application development language pages. So he's got some links there for .NET, Nojo, Python users, free developers guide, and an ebook. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Azure tips and tricks. So this is a weekly tips and videos. There's over 230 tips and 80 videos, particularly on this particular link. There's a YouTube playlist. So again, if you're into the video version of learning, there's a whole nother, besides Azure Friday, there's the whole Azure YouTube channel. Rocks, Paper, Scissors, Lizards, and Spock sample applications. So here's a whole group of sample applications that Scott Hasselman and friends put together for Ignite last year. So it allows you to see all the, Azure Kubernetes, API management, machine learning, lots of different great GitHub examples, as well as in Visual Studio. And then finally, there is a newsletter that he points to here, which would be a great resource. Now, this is probably more focused towards a developer versus an infrastructure person, but you never know. There's some of the documentation around Azure, as well as looking at how Microsoft does themselves, DevOps. And then, of course, there's the link to the Azure Friday series. So there's another perspective on if you're ready to start learning Azure, here's another perspective on how you should get learning that process. There's also free ebooks. The first one I got here is the one he referenced in that article, the ebooks for developers. So that link is right here. This was written back in 2017, so it's slightly dated now, but you click on right here and download it. As you can see, it's a very comprehensive book on Developer's Guide to How Do I Get Started. And that's available. Then that got to me thinking about, well, this isn't the only ebook that's out there. So I did a quick Bing search and found the 170 for so today. If you go to Azure, what are the different ebooks that are all free? And these are all free. So let me kind of point to this one here. So if you take my link here, and this is off of azure.com under the resources tab, white papers, and the type of white paper you're looking for is an ebook. So there's also white papers, but if you want an ebook, there's 170 of them out here. Okay, so 15 lessons learned migrating SAP to the cloud, moving Windows Server to Azure to enable compliance. Future, you can just imagine there actually is a search tool here that you can search by product within Azure. Okay, so if I want to see, the ebooks that pertain to a particular service within Azure, I can do that. But there are 170. All these are free. You can download them, view them, save them, share them. Again, you start to see where this information becomes overwhelming. I would personally start at the blog, not here, but once you find some of the resources that you're looking for, may be a great resource for you to do. And then finally, I've got one last one here, tips and tricks. Azure tips and tricks, becoming more productive within Azure. That's this tab. Again, this is off of the Azure Comp, and this is with blog posts back almost a year ago in 19. So Michael, again, he's one of my favorite posters within the Azure space, but he's just he kind of put together here just a bunch of tips and tricks. And so he points to the 230 different tips that he's got out there. As you can see, this is an interactive portal, switching and helping you through the different pieces of code as he goes through the different examples. And so there's a whole series of tips and tricks that he's got. So there's both the site that you can go to here for Azure tips and tricks on GitHub, and then the reposting. So all the different tips and tricks that he has done in the past are saved out there. So if you want to go out and do that, he's got all kinds of tips and tricks that he's learned and stored in a central location over the years. Let me kind of pause again there to see if, Adam, we got any more questions from the audience.
Yep. So Angela asks, she recently passed the AZ900, wondering what your recommendation for the next best exam to take, maybe AZ104 or AZ500?
Great question, Angela. There's 104, there's 301, and there's 500 are the most common 3 to take after that. Congratulations on passing your 900. I would question, what do you want to do with the certifications? Are you a developer? Are you an infrastructure person? Are you a data? Are you going to be a data scientist? What do you want to do with this, or what are you passionate about? That should be a driver as to what exam and certification you look for next. And then the other is what's most valuable to your current employer, right? If I'm not saying they're going to give you a raise necessarily because you got this certification, but what from your perspective is most important to your employer, a lot of times that can help determine what exam you want to take next. There's no one right or wrong answer as what has to be the second exam after 900. I always recommend to people your first exam in Azure should be 900, and then figure out where do you go from there. And I don't have the right answers. If we had a little bit more time kind of to talk about your scenario, then I could probably give you some more recommendations and or ask other people that are in this group or in this community, what have they done? You took 900, now what, right? And see what they suggest. Adam, do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, I echo what you say, and also it's great that Angela takes the AZ900. I think, like you said, John, I recommend everyone take that, no matter your background, no matter your role, whether you're CEO, CTO, or whether you're deeply technical and you've been doing Azure for years. Like myself, I did AZ900 because I feel that I should have taken AZ900 because I feel everyone should have taken it, whether you're a developer or infrastructure. So that's great. Everyone should be like Angela. In terms of next exam, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, John. It depends a little bit about the background. If you have more of a developer background, there are some developer certifications that you should take, or maybe an infrastructure background, and there are some infrastructure-focused ones. A good one after the infrastructure might be the AZ500. That one's a little bit more security-related, but one way to find out what the next best exam that you can take is to follow the recommendation that I said earlier, which is, I'm not sure which exam to take, so I'm actually just going to go take one and see what kinds of questions that it's going to ask and learn, because AZ500, let's go through that, and it might be stuff, but this is a nightmare. I hate all of this. There's nothing on here I care about. Don't want to know it ever. I prefer just sticking to code, and that's fine. You've learned that, and then maybe you focus on some of those. But one other recommendation I'd have is particularly from, as we've seen in the cloud, I'm sure you've seen it too, John, traditional silos of, I'm a developer and then I throw it over the wall at the infrastructure people who put it on the various environments, and they run the infrastructure. It's their problem if it breaks. Those traditional silos are coming down, and so developers should know, in my opinion, that and in my experience actually, the way that Azure infrastructure works. It's not as daunting as on-prem because such it is so automated, but should know VNets and load balancers and application gateways and what a WAF is and those things. And developers, I suggest, should know that. Similarly, infrastructure folks should know some of the patterns, some of the services that developers would typically use to construct their applications. Not necessarily, not code, don't need to know that, but how the patterns and solutions like Kubernetes, why would you use that versus container instances or web apps, logic apps, things like that. Should have awareness of some of those things. So cross learning is, I suggest, very important.
Yep, that's great.
So there were a couple of other questions.
Yeah. What other questions do we have?
I did ask. Let's see. So I actually answered some as you were talking earlier, John.
Okay,
but one of them
good.
was, okay, do you have any mock projects or assignments which we can use to learn? Practicing something can be a challenge. And one guidance I had, I'll see what you feel, if you have anything else, John, I just posted a link to Microsoft Cloud Workshop.com, yep. which is a set of hands-on labs. So they're walkthroughs, they're sample solutions and ARM templates, and for the developer side of things, example code for various scenarios, from IoT to infrastructure to security, containers, Kubernetes. There's a whole bunch of them for that. Do you happen to have any others that you would go to, John?
Yeah, that's a great example. I do a lot of free career coaching to people outside of my day job. It just friends and family and I don't know, acquaintances I've had over the year, and kind of coaching them in there. And I always get, I had this guy that was in banking and got laid off, and he's like, well, how in the world do I get into technology? And I said, well, there's all this learning. And he kind of got stuck like that. He said, I took the basics, but I really didn't understand the hands-on. And I said, okay, you're looking to where you want to become a consultant, where you're charging people for your knowledge, and your resume says, I have nothing, right? I've learned some stuff, but I've never actually done this for billable stuff. I said, think about, and it's really hard when you don't have a job, but maybe if you do have a job, you have some spare time because the circumstances we're in today. Think about a nonprofit. Think about your church. Think about Habitat for Humanity, some kind of non-for-profit. Let's say they just need you to build a website. Okay. How would you build that website in Azure? Okay. Or you need them to build a mobile app that the back end runs in Azure, right? Or they need help getting something up and running and configured in the infrastructure in Azure. How could you're not getting paid for it, but you're getting experience and you're learning on the job, right? So I like to make things real world. And so I challenge people to go find your church, some nonprofit that could use your technical help. You don't have to be the guru, but learn on their dime, and you're not charging them for anything. So you can learn at whatever speed you need to, but sometimes having that pressure, that importance of getting it to work, and you can always get other people to help you. Like, hey, I'm doing this free for my organization. Would you mind helping me, helping me out? And most people would be glad to help you wherever they can, but amazing way to learn. And guess what? Those are great things to put on a resume, right? Let's say you're in some, totally other field and you're trying to get into Azure. If you have some, and you don't have any experience and you're trying to break in to get that first job, but if you have two different apps that you've built or infrastructure that you've helped, or helped your church get rid of their server in the closet and got it all up in Azure, that's real world hands-on and worth putting on a resume. So that's some of my recommendations, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Any other questions you have?
Let's see, any others? I think there's a couple others that I've answered to. For those who may or may not be seeing the Q&A, there, Mike Q posted a link to a Reddit comment with some other suggestions of content to look at. I'll just chime in from my experience in terms of just things that I've looked to learn. Those hands-on labs, that link that I put there, just been a very useful way for me personally to learn. I learned mostly from from doing it, if you will. And
Yep.
one nice thing about the hands-on labs, I mentioned they have sort of pre-built examples, demo projects, things that you can just get running relatively quickly that do something simple, some simple e-commerce sites, for example, simple IoT examples, things like that, that just mean you don't have to quickly get it going. And then I've learned by tinkering with it, messing with it, improving it, something comes out, some new feature, I think, oh, let's try this on my little example project to do whatever, running on Kubernetes or whatever, things like that. So that's been, and so the source, the genus of those examples have been on those hands-on labs. Okay, thanks, John. No other questions.
Okay. Well, let me kind of wrap this up then, if we can still do some Q&A if we need to do that. But I wouldn't be doing justice unless I told you a little bit more about our company. Here's 3 different ways to connect with us. LinkedIn, and we've got, Facebook pages, Instagram pages, as well as our public site. We are hiring, okay? So we do have openings in Houston for Azure skills. As I mentioned, we are doing Azure projects as we speak for Chevron, for Phillips 66, and for Exxon. And I can never find enough resources in Houston. Okay, so those are the different ways that you can communicate or connect with us. And we'd love to kind of, see some folks from this community join Sapient. We again are a very strong partner with Microsoft, and will continue now that I'm enrolled to increase that relationship with Microsoft. I'll put it out there. There's my email address. It's very simple, john.weston@publicissapient.com. If you want to send your resume to me, I will make sure that it gets to the right recruiter. We do have specific recruiters in the Houston area that are, as we speak, trying to find Azure resources, and they've asked me to kind of reach out to people. Sapient's a great place to work. I'm just phenomenally excited that I took the job here. To me, I could have worked anywhere after leaving Microsoft, and it's not about the pay or to me, it's what's most important is the people you work with. And as you get to know more people at Sapient, it's just a phenomenal culture. Very, very people focused in these, interesting and challenging times that we're going through right now. We had a meeting with our CEO this morning, and he said, there's 3 things you need to worry about in these times. Number 1 is people. Take care of yourself, take care of all of our people. Number 2 is take care of our customers, stay close to our customers because they need our help as a trusted advisor in these challenging times. And number 3 is we're going to take care of the company, and in that order. And to me, that is really important, that a company like this puts the employee number 1 and most important. So to me, I'm really proud to work here. And if you want to come work here too, let me know and I can get your resume to the right people. And I want to thank everybody for allowing me to do this today. I know it's challenging to try to do this virtually instead of in person, but hopefully it was a good experience or investment of an hour of your time. I really hope to stay connected to this community and come down there to some of your meetings in person once we can start meeting in person again. And Adam, I want to thank you again for inviting me and allowing me to come share my experiences with Azure.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yes, really appreciate your time and sharing your experience and your stories with us this evening.
Any other final questions before we kind of wrap up?
We have one that you can take. So, what does it take to be a Microsoft MVP? Asks Ivan.
So MVP is a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. That is a program which Microsoft rewards those that help the community. Okay, and so there's things like forums. There's places that people that do speeches like myself. Now, I've never actually been an MVP. I go to the MVP Summit for many, many years. But a MVP is a nomination process. So you have to get someone within Microsoft to nominate you to be an MVP, and it's around a specific product. So you could be like a SharePoint MVP or an Azure MVP or a Windows Server MVP or a Windows 10 MVP. And so what that does is the Microsoft person has to write up what you've done in the last 12 months to help Microsoft spread basically evangelism, if you will, how you're helping the community advance and knowledge sharing about that product. And so, getting experience, answering questions on forums, you're doing speaking engagements, speaking at user groups like this are all great documentation. what I would recommend is you have at least, if you just do forums and nothing else, it's probably not the best way to get an MVP award. Those that have multiple facets, so in-person events, online, as well as, public speaking, those seem to be, in my experience, is the best way to create a documented case. And so it's a nomination process. The Microsoft employee nominates you, and then there's a selection process, and it's an award. And there's certain benefits that come with the award. One of those being you can say you're an MVP, and then you get to attend. Microsoft, I think, pays for part of the attendance of you to go to the Microsoft MVP Summit, which is a very prestigious event every year in Seattle. Adam, am I representing it right?
Yes. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, John. Okay, no other questions. There were some other questions that I've actually answered while you were just talking, John. So okay. Folks were asking about the links in your deck, John, and I've shared. So for everyone, I'll post these on the Meetup site.
Great.
So, right. Many thanks, John. I'll close us out.
Thanks, Adam.
So thank you very much again, John, and thank you. We had between 40 and 50 folks join us tonight. Really appreciate everyone virtually coming out with us. Really welcome feedback. This is our first live event, as I shared at the beginning. Please post any other questions you might have on the Meetup site for this event. We're happy to engage with yourselves there, including anything that you might have missed with John, where we'll also be posting the deck, like I just said. Also, welcome feedback as to other topics that you would like to see. You can post those in the Meetup discussion group as well, and we can have a variety of presenters. So always keen to present to a group like this. So with that, thank you all for attending and for interactively collaborating with us in the Q&A. Thank you, John, for speaking, and we will see you virtually again. Stay safe out there, everyone.
Thank you.